morning we buried my wife, my son kept checking his watch. He did it 4 times before the pastor even finished the opening prayer. I counted each time because there was nothing else for my eyes to do, except stare at the closed casket and notice every small disrespect happening around it. My name is Walter Greer. I am 67 years old. I spent 22 years as a fire captain in Terre Haute, Indiana. Before that, I served 4 years in the Army, where I learned something simple but hard. The most dangerous moments are never the ones that warn you first. Fire is the same. The quiet room is usually the one about to explode. I should have seen what was coming. The signs were there, all of them. But grief does something to your thinking. It slows you down in the wrong places and blinds you in others. It makes you miss what should be obvious. Margaret and I were married for 41 years. She was a small, careful woman, the kind who kept every receipt in labeled folders and wrote every appointment in a neat, handwritten calendar. For 35 years, she worked as office manager at Holloway Insurance on Jefferson Avenue. She handled books, staff, schedules, everything, with a calm order that made the place run like clockwork. She understood something I only later realized. Order is a form of care. She was the kind of woman who never forgot a birthday, always returned calls the same day, and never raised her voice in anger because she never needed to. She didn't argue loudly. She argued with facts, patience, and quiet certainty, and she always won that way. She died on a Tuesday in October. The doctors called it cardiac arrest. She was 64. Her heart was not perfect, but it was stable enough, or so her doctor believed. She took her medication every morning with orange juice and whole grain toast. Nothing about her routine suggested she would not be here the next day. No warning. No hospital stay. No final goodbye. The funeral was that Friday. It was held at St. Mark's, a small Presbyterian church on the north side of town, where she had sung in the choir for decades. The church was full. Her co-workers came, her neighbors came, former clients came, even old friends who drove in from Columbus and Louisville. People loved her in a quiet way, the kind of love given to dependable, kind people who never ask for attention but earn respect anyway. My son Derek arrived late, about 11 minutes after it started, with his wife Lacey beside him. He wore a gray suit that cost more than my first car. He always looked like he was being delayed by life, like he had somewhere more important to be. He sat next to me without touching my shoulder or squeezing my hand. He only nodded at me like I was someone he vaguely knew from work. Lacey sat on his other side, wearing strong perfume that felt out of place in a church. She kept her sunglasses on until an usher asked her to take them off. During the second hymn, she leaned in and whispered something into Derek's ear. He gave a small nod. I didn't hear what she said, but I recognized the kind of conversation it was. I had seen it between them before, in different forms, for years. After the burial, we went to the church hall for the reception. The women from the church had prepared food the way Margaret would have appreciated. Simple dishes, nothing fancy, all made with care. Derek stood near the back, barely touching his plate while talking on his phone. Lacey walked through the room once, accepted a couple of sweet teas from polite neighbors, then went outside and sat in Derek's car for nearly 45 minutes. When the last guests left, my son came over to me. He didn't ask how I was doing. He didn't ask if I needed anything. He placed his hand on the back of a folding chair and looked at me like a man who had waited long enough. "Dad," he said, "we need to talk about Mom's accounts." I looked at him but didn't answer right away. "She had a pension from Holloway," he continued, "and some investment accounts." Lacey looked into it. "As the surviving spouse, everything transfers to you, and then it comes to us. We just need to start paperwork before the weekend." I said slowly, "Your mother hasn't even been in the ground 6 hours." "I know the timing is bad," he replied, "but there are deadlines, taxes. We just need to stay ahead of it." I looked at him longer this time. He was 40 now. I could still see the boy he used to be. The kid who rode his bike to my fire station on Saturdays and sat in the engine bay eating sandwiches, asking me endless questions about trucks and equipment. That boy was still somewhere inside him, buried under years of bad choices and influence I never fully trusted. "There's nothing to discuss today," I said. His jaw tightened. He glanced toward Lacey, who had just come back into the doorway. Something passed between them without words. "Dad," he said again, "we're under financial pressure right now, serious pressure. We need clarity on the estate timeline." I stood up. I am 6 feet tall, and I spent most of my life going into burning buildings when other people ran out. I looked at my son and said, "Go home, take your wife, don't call me until Monday." He left. Both of them did. The sound of his leased BMW leaving the parking lot stayed with me longer than it should have. It felt like something ending that I couldn't name yet. I stayed in the church hall after everyone else left. The women came back to clean tables, and I helped them without thinking, folding cloths, carrying dishes, just to keep my hands busy. When it was done, I walked out toward my truck. My phone rang before I reached the door. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something old inside me made me answer. Firehouse instinct. You always pick up when it rings, because it might matter. "Walter," a voice said. I knew it immediately. "Frank Holloway." "Frank," I said, "thanks for coming today." He didn't respond to that. His voice was different, careful, measured. "Walter, I need you to come to my office, now, not tomorrow. I paused. What's going on? I found something in Margaret's desk when I went to collect her things this morning, he said. You need to see it before anyone else does, and you need to understand something first. His voice dropped lower. Don't tell your son, don't tell his wife. If they know you're coming, I don't know if you'll be safe. The air felt heavier around me. Frank, what did you find? A long pause followed. I found out why she lost weight for 6 months, why she stopped sleeping, and why she never told you what she was afraid of. He exhaled slowly. Come now, Walter. I drove there without thinking clearly. The streets of Terre Haute were the same ones I had driven for decades, but that night everything felt slightly off, like the town had shifted without telling me. Familiar places looked unfamiliar in small ways I couldn't explain. Frank met me at the door himself. He looked tired, older than I remembered. He led me through the dark office into a conference room and closed the door behind us. A woman was already sitting inside. I didn't recognize her. She introduced herself as Diane Reeves, a private investigator from Indianapolis. Frank pushed a folder across the table. Margaret hired her in April, he said quietly, 8 months before she died. I sat down slowly. My hands felt heavier than normal. She told me not to show you unless something happened to her, Frank continued. She said she needed to handle it first. She didn't want to leave half a story. I opened the folder. The first document was a bank statement. The balance was $2,460,000. I stared at it without moving. Frank spoke again. She was better with money than anyone knew. She managed our firm accounts for years, and privately, she invested for me too. Quietly, carefully. She built that over a long time. Diane leaned forward. There's more you need to see. She placed photographs on the table. The dates were recent. One showed Derek inside my kitchen. Another showed him holding 2 prescription bottles. In the next, he was transferring pills from one bottle into another. The last image showed him slipping a bottle into his jacket. Diane said, "We had surveillance for 3 weeks. He had a copied key to your house." My throat went dry. She continued, "The substitute pills contained a mix of stimulants and a blood thinner. In someone with heart medication, the effects would mimic cardiac decline. Repeated doses would look like natural failure. The final dose would look like a heart attack." The room felt completely still. Frank spoke quietly. She knew. 6 weeks before she died, she found a mistake in the pills and had them tested. I sat there trying to place every memory again in a new order. Her tiredness, her silence at dinner, the way she sometimes stared into nothing. I thought it was age. I thought it was routine sadness. I never saw fear. I had spent my life running toward danger for strangers. I never saw it happening in my own house. I stood up suddenly. "I'm going home," I said. Diane stopped me with a calm voice. "If you do that, everything she built collapses. Evidence gets contaminated. He will disappear into lawyers and delay tactics." Frank placed an envelope on the table. "Margaret left instructions," he said. "She planned for this." My hands stopped. On the front of the envelope in her handwriting, it said, "For Walter, if I am not there to say it myself." And beside it, more papers were spread out. Diane spoke again, quieter now. "Your son owes $280,000 to a private lender in Cincinnati, not a bank. And the people behind it are not the kind who forget debt easily." She wrote that she had been scared to tell me earlier because she already knew how I would react. She knew I would stop being careful and rush straight into the situation. She said she had spent 41 years watching me walk into burning buildings without thinking twice, and over time she had come to realize that my courage was also my weakness. She understood that I would always prefer facing danger directly instead of going around it, even when going around it was the only safe way. She said that was exactly what this situation needed. Careful steps, not direct force. She also wrote that she was sorry for the months she had seemed quiet and distant. She said she had been doing the hardest thing she had ever done in her life, which was acting like everything was normal while she was quietly building a case that might outlive her if she did not survive long enough to see it used. She wrote that she hoped I would not stay angry with her for keeping it all hidden. She believed that, in time, I would understand why she had done it this way. She said she trusted me more than anyone else to eventually see her reasons clearly. She wrote, "You are the most steady person I have ever known. The world is better with you in it than without you." And I made every decision I made with that truth at the center. Then she added, "I needed you alive. I needed you to be on the other side of all this. Everything I built so that you could stand on solid ground when the storm finally passed." I stayed at the kitchen table for a very long time after I finished reading those words. The house felt unusually quiet, like even the walls were holding their breath. 3 months after the verdict, I decided to sell the house. It was not because I had no choice, and not because the memories were too heavy to carry, even though some of them were. I sold it because Margaret had spent her whole life trying to make other people's spaces feel right, and I believed she deserved to be remembered in a way that continued moving forward, not in a way that stayed frozen in the past. I kept a few things from the house. I kept her blue lamp that had always glowed softly in the evenings. I kept her kitchen calendar, the last one she had written on with her careful handwriting. I also kept her rose garden clippers, still slightly dusty from the last time she had used them in the fall. Everything else was cleared out slowly, piece by piece, like closing chapters without tearing the pages. I moved into a smaller home on the east side of town, a simple bungalow with a front porch and a small, manageable yard. The neighborhood reminded me of where we had first started in our 20s, when everything was simpler and the future still felt wide open. I learned, slowly and with effort, how to cook more than just a few basic meals. I started calling Frank every Thursday without fail. I called Diane once a month to check on the foundation and see how things were going. The Margaret Greer Financial Safety Foundation was officially formed 4 months after the trial. David Marsh took care of all the legal paperwork and formal registration. The purpose of the foundation was very specific. It was created to help elderly people who believed their finances or personal safety might be at risk from family members or people close to them. It provided free legal advice, investigative help, and emergency financial protection. It also paid for forensic accountants when bank accounts did not make sense, and it helped fund detailed documentation work similar to what Diane had built for Margaret, especially for people who could not afford that kind of help themselves. In the first year alone, the foundation worked on 11 different cases across Indiana and Ohio. In 3 of those cases, criminal charges were officially filed. In 2 of those, the cases ended in convictions. Margaret had known exactly what she was doing when she kept all those records. She had always known. Every page, every note, every detail had been part of something larger. On her birthday in March, the first one after she was gone, I drove out to the cemetery early in the morning before the wind picked up. The grave marker had already been placed. It showed her name, her dates, and the small phrase she had once chosen years ago when we had jokingly talked about what we wanted written someday. She had always said she wanted something simple and true, something that could not be misunderstood. She had said, "I want mine to say she did the work," and that is exactly what it said. She did the work. I stood there for a long time in the quiet morning air. The sky was that pale, soft blue that Indiana gets in March, the kind of color that feels more like a beginning than an ending. Somewhere in the bare trees to the south, a cardinal was calling out. I could hear it clearly, but I could not see it yet. I spoke to her the way I always had, without formality, without rehearsed words, just honesty. I told her about the foundation and what it was doing. I told her about the bungalow and the small porch. I told her I had finally fixed the leak in the truck she had been reminding me about for 2 years. I told her that Frank was trying to teach me chess, even though I was still terrible at it, and that he was more patient with me than she ever would have been. I told her that I understood now why she had done everything the way she did, and that I did not hold any of it against her. Not the secrecy, not the distance, not the long, quiet nights when she was carrying something I could not see or share. I told her I was still standing, because that was what she had needed from me all along. The cardinal called again, this time closer. I looked up and saw it clearly on a branch at eye level, only about 20 feet away. It was bright red against the gray winter branches, small but steady, almost still. It felt completely unaffected by everything around it, like it belonged to a different kind of world. After a while, I left the cemetery and drove back home. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat on the porch with a legal pad. I started going through notes for the Foundation's quarterly report, line by line, thinking through what still needed to be done. Life does not stop because of grief. It keeps moving in every direction at once, whether you are ready or not. The only real choice is whether you move with it or fall behind. Margaret had understood that better than anyone I had ever known. She had planned for the future with careful attention, the same way she handled everything else in her life, and she had trusted me to live in that future for both of us. I intended to honor that trust every single day that remained for me. If you are hearing this story and something about it feels familiar, if you recognize it in your own family or in someone close to you, then there is one thing I want you to understand clearly. Silence protects the wrong people. The careful documentation my wife built in the final months of her life was what led to accountability. The records she kept, the investigator she hired, and the attorney she trusted were the difference between justice and nothing at all. Take care of your records. Trust the people who have truly earned it. Do not confuse loyalty with obligation, and do not confuse love with something that traps you. Those are not the same things, and mixing them up is how the wrong people stay protected. If this story meant something to you, you can let me know. And tell me honestly, would you have left the single dollar or nothing at all?